Hey family, it's Tasha MAMABEAR Prepping. You already know what time it is. Get your drink, pull up. We're about to get into it today. Welcome to the channel. Welcome back to the channel where we just talk about preparedness, emergency preparedness, different things that could happen, natural events, weather events, food preservation, all of that good stuff. Today, we're actually going to talk about food preservation, and we're going to talk about I came up with 5 reasons why it is extremely important to pressure can. Learn to pressure canning food. It's a way of preserving food, but why it is so important for both now and for the future. So number 1, let's get right into it, is the obvious, which is shelf stable food, right? The whole point of pressure canning food is to actually cook the food right, seal the jar, and then that whole entire process, scientific process, actually allows you to put that jar of food on a shelf, and it will last a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, forever in some situations, okay? You take a soup, you make a soup for dinner. If you pressure can that soup's lasting for years, if not decades, on a shelf, unless it's compromised in other ways, right? But if you made a soup at home and you had to put it in the fridge, everybody didn't eat it, whatever, or you wanted to make it for the future, that soup's not going to last longer than a couple days, maybe a week or so, right? Yes, could you make it last months by putting it in the freezer? Yes, but as we all know, it only takes one event for you to not be at your home. You might have generators for your freezers and for your fridge, but maybe it's a situation that happens and you're not home. You're not able to get home and even hook up the generators, and you lose everything, and so that food is then lost, right? So everything we do in preparedness here is how can we prepare, but also always how can we prepare with no electricity, okay? And so that's why we like shelf-stable foods, like a pressure canned food. And there's other ways to get stuff on a jar and put it on the shelf, like water bathing. But pressure canning is so important to me because that's where you're going to do your soups, your stews, your meats, right? Getting steak meat, pork meat, hamburger, getting stuff on the shelf that is going to last years is very important, especially the way we're going with all these rules and regulations with animals and them not wanting us to eat animals and shying away from that even being on the pyramid, and hey, eat these bugs instead. Like, that's the way that they want us to go. And so you got to prepare by stockpiling and making sure that you're going to have your own ways of getting meat. Part of that is you can stockpile it by pressure canning meat, pressure canning soups and stews, and getting it on your shelf that way. Can you store cans and all that stuff? Absolutely. Can you grow your own animals, have your own animals for meat? Absolutely. That's the way to go. But we always talk about options, and this is an option. Number 2 is stretches your meat. Now, this is twofold. If you take any recipe on the internet, right, and it has, let's say, a ground meat of some sort, ground turkey, ground hamburger, ground sausage, whatever, and or take any other kind of meat. Typically, a lot of recipes for a family is a pound of meat. A pound of meat is a lot of meat, and oftentimes a family will cook that, and a lot of times there's leftovers. It does not get ate, and what happens? It either goes in the trash or it goes in the fridge, and it doesn't get ate, and then it ends up going bad, and you've wasted that money, you've wasted that meat. So twofold. Pressure canning, why it's so important, is because you can take a pound of meat and I'll spread it out on a soup or a stew, and you now have 5 to 7 jars, quart-sized jars of a soup or stew, and across all of that, it took 1 pound of meat. Where in America here, you pull a recipe, it's like a pound for each recipe. And so it's a way to stretch your meat, stretch your materials. It's not just meat, but meat's very important, okay, because it's expensive and it's important, right? But it stretches a way to stretch your meat and stretch other ingredients that you're putting into this, your vegetables, your carbs, your everything, right? But super important. So that pound will make 7 quart-sized jars, and 7 quart-sized jars in a peacetime event, no rationing, no thinking of that involved. That's a meal. That quart-sized jar of soup, stew, whatever it is, that is a meal, okay? If it's a quart-sized jar of meat, that is a meal, okay? Now, a lot of meat that's quart-sized like that is going to be, let's talk about that just real quick too. When I'm doing meat and meat only, I typically am keeping that to a pint-sized jar because, again, you think of rationing, you think of you do not need a whole pound of meat for a meal, okay? The only meat that I'll do by itself that's not part of a stew, not part of a whatever, that's in a quart size is chicken. So I'll do chicken thighs like that, chicken legs like that, chicken breasts like that. But for the most part, any kind of ground meat, any of my pork or cubed steak meat, that type of stuff, always pint-sized jar, okay? You want to think shelf stable, using it now in a working pantry, and also the future when you get to a point where you're having a ration, and what makes sense for the size of jars so you're not wasting food later, just like we'd be wasting food right now, okay? So stretches your meat. And then the second fold of that is rationing it. You know, that jar, peacetime, like I said, a quart-sized jar of a soup or stew right now will feed our family, right? Everybody gets a nice sized bowl, great. However, if I increase the amount of people, I still can use that same jar. I'm not opening another quart or opening another quart. I'm using that same one in a rationing situation where there's more people and we're just adding something to the mix. We're maybe making a bunch of rice and everybody gets a nice sized bowl of rice with a little bit of this quart-sized jar. And so I can stretch this for rations as well. So I really, really like it twofold for stretching your ingredients, stretching your meat, both when you're making it and when you're, you know, divvying it out, okay? Divvying it out. Number 3 thing I have is you control the ingredients, right? There is no preservatives, all this extra stuff. I mean, you are literally in charge of the amount of salt that goes in there, the amount of seasonings, the type of seasonings. If you're thinking holistic or thinking medically, you can add stuff. Like I add garlic and onions to almost everything just because medicinally that is great for our bodies. And later we're going to be in a time period where maybe we can't get medicines, and having certain things in our bodies. I do a lot of curried meat, meaning just I take curry, it has a lot of turmeric in it, has some other seasonings in it. It's a great overall seasoning. And so I season a lot of beef stews and you know, chilies and stuff like that with curry. I use curry a lot. That's one of my go-to seasonings, and it's not a salt, right? It's just a seasoning, and it's great. I make my fried potatoes with it, baby. If you haven't had fried potatoes with a little bit of curry in there, be careful though when you're cooking with it, because it will dye up your hands, it will dye up your counters and stuff. So be careful when you're actually touching it or working with it. If you're scooping it up with a spoon, spatula, and then you're putting that on your counter, and then so it's, you know, it's got some dyes and stuff. So curry, absolutely love curry. Turmeric, different things like that. Think about the things that you want now for health reasons and the things that you want later for health reasons, and preserve those things, okay? But it's super important because you're in charge of what goes in it. If you're like, oh, soups are so salty. Okay, baby, make your soup and don't put no salt in it, or put some salt in it. You got to put a little bit of salt in it for the process. But my point is, right, you determine that, okay? You can determine the levels of everything that goes into it. You know exactly what ingredients went into it as far as people's allergies and different things like that. It's just great, great, great. I love soups too because you get, you know, the bulk of stuff, and then you get a broth, a homemade broth. And basically, you know, essentially that all could be put together so that it can cook in its own broth again and heat up. But also it's just great. Somebody's sick and they need to have the broth, and other people are going to have the actual meat, whatever. It's just a great option. I just really, really, really like soup, stews, and different things like that, okay? Because you control everything, okay? And then you can add to it. You know, a lot of people, they pressure can and they put very, very little seasonings, very little stuff in it to keep it as bland as possible. That way they have more options when they actually open it to cook it. You know, a ground ham or ground meat, they want to be able to be versatile with that and what they're then going to use it to or add it to, so that, you know, they have a variety of options as far as the meal that they're going to make, okay? All right, and that's also why a lot of people do ingredient parts. I'm a big fan of a meal altogether in one jar, but there's a lot of people that are a big fan of individual ingredients everywhere, not mixing it, so that it gives them options. Me, I'm more about easy, which goes into my next one, meal ready to eat. And this is very important for grid down, right? Meal ready to eat, that means it's a meal. You essentially do not, in theory, have to heat it up. This food is cooked 100% in these jars. If it is not compromised, it's good to eat. Now, obviously, it tastes better warmed up, and the idea is that it's so ready to go that it really just needs to be heated up. So that's much easier to do on a barbecue and even a smoker, even on a fire, open fire, whatever, a propane stove, whatever it is you're cooking on, a rocket stove, whatever. It's much easier to take a pan and just heat something up. It doesn't take that long. You don't need extra water and all this stuff to make it, to actually cook it and make it. You're not having to do that. You're just having to heat it up. It doesn't take that long. You can throw the ingredients in a quart-sized jar of any of my soups, throw it in a gallon-sized baggie, close it up, take it outside, let it sit in the sun for a little bit. Don't even need a fire. Don't even need that, right? If you had the water, you could do some immersion heating, put it in the bag and just heat it up if you're trying to not dirty dishes and dirty pans and all that. But again, if you're not trying to do that, that means you're probably trying to save water and then using immersion. But immersion, if you're cooking in the bag, you can use that water over and over and over and over again until it's essentially gone, evaporated, cooked off. But putting it in a bag, setting it in the sun, let that baby cook out there, right? Let it warm up. Putting it in a sun oven. A lot of ways, but think about this. You're not making it. You're not cooking it. You're just heating it up. So having the ability to just take something off your shelf and it's ready to go is fantastic, right? It's just like, I could go on all day about preserving food, but if we stay in line with the pressure canning food, it's just a very, very easy way to do your meals ready to eat. People talk about MREs, making MREs. These are essentially meals ready to eat, good to go, okay? And then my last thing is future food preservation. Think about a world where an EMP is hit and we either have no power forever or we have no power for decades, right? Years and decades. That life is a different life. That's a life that's changing, and food and getting food and preserving food is going to change for a lot of people. And there's a lot of people that are very naive that don't know. There's folks that maybe they catch a little animal, they have no idea how to skin it, open it up safely, then skin it. Maybe they eat some of it right away, but they have no idea if they had extra meat, what to do with it to make it last, to dry it out or smoke it or boil it in a soup. And then let's say you boil it in a soup. How do you keep that soup then? Oh, the soup's fine because it was cooked. Okay, so you got to think about those things on how do you maintain stuff and food preservation. Now, people will say, well, how are we going to be doing, canning? Well, if you have a canner and you had a propane, a way to do it outside on a propane thing or inside, whatever, you can continue to do that. If all you need is a good sized burner still to be able to do that, propane. Now people will be like, well, what happens when the propane runs out? Okay, then you're going to have to address when the day that the propane runs out. But until then, you can do that. And then from there, you figure out how you do pressure canning over a fire. Can that be dangerous? Absolutely. Is that a technique that's going to have a learning curve and you're going to have to carefully do that? Yes. But I'm very confident in the sense of what I know about canning right now, that push comes to shove, I can learn how to do it over fire. Now, I know for a fact, though, that you're going to want some things. So think about that now. Think about the things you want. You're going to want a flat surface grill, something that can move up and down easily with a heavy canner on it, okay? You have to be able to move it up and lower it over that fire to regulate it, right? Just like you do your stove. You're going to do it slowly, lowering it slowly, letting it come up to pressure slowly so you're not doing anything. You're not doing anything crazy, right? Learning where that sweet spot is on the fire, right? And then being able to raise it up higher to lower it when it hits pressure, and then holding that pressure. All of that is going to be a technique that we're going to have to learn. Now, a lot of people be like, screw it, I'm not going to can once everything goes left. But I tell you what, you're going to have options for preserving food. And I want to give myself the most options possible. If the neighbor catches, an animal and they want to share it, and that's great, they want to share it, but you are responsible for preserving your food for your family. You are next to a waterway and you're able to catch fish or whatever, you need to have a way and know a way of how to preserve that fish. Yes, could you dry it out? But I might want some fish head soup and want some stuff made up, right? Yum. Could you imagine fish head soup, all the stuff that's in that? You throw some curry in there, baby, that would be good. So my point is, you've got to give yourself options, and pressure canning is such an amazing option. And the option is that you can get it now too. We're on grid. It's very easy to do, and you can just continue to do it. I mean, do one pressure canning project a week, get you something on the shelf, and just watch it slowly grow. Okay. And there's other preservation things that you can do. Water bathing, that's how you do all your jams and jellies and stuff. There's a lot of different stuff that you can do with that option as well, which is, you know, safer for some people, but you can't pressure, you know, you can't water bathe soups, you can't water bathe meats. And for me, those are the heavy hitters. Those are the priority things that I pressure can in this house, or that I preserve, as far as putting it in a jar on the shelf. And then we go from there to add the other things that we want to add. But pressure canning needs to be a priority. There is all types of reasons why it's important. So if you don't have one, baby, I need you to push, learn how to do it. Do not be scared. A lot of folks have one and have not done it yet. Pull it out, watch a ton of videos like I did, learn. There's a ton of videos showing you piece by piece how to do it. Watch videos on somebody who has the kind of canner that you got, and then just watch those videos and watch them do it. Okay. And get, you know, feel good about what you're learning. Once you start, it's very addictive and it's fun, and you're gonna enjoy it. You're gonna like it. Okay. And you're gonna feel good because you're getting food on your shelf that literally is going to last years, decades, whatever. Okay. So it's just like everything else you learn or take on. Once you start doing it, you see the value of it right away, and that's important. Very, very important. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know these videos don't always do the best, but let me tell you a little bit about where I'm thinking of going with this channel. You know, we obviously are trying to do a homestead here on this little bit of acreage, but we're obviously trying to find a place right now. We're trying to move within the next 6 months. We're trying to leave this area and go somewhere where there's land. And my daily life is food preservation, yeah, stockpiling a little bit, but it's doing the projects, it's doing the things, it's gardening, it's the chickens, it's more of my homestead life. It's more because it's a lifestyle. And so this channel is probably going to start switching. You know, I have my other channel that I was going to do like some homesteading stuff, but I'm probably going to just start combining that stuff and bringing some stuff here. Now, some of the stuff people are not going to care about. They're not going to care about, you know, if I do some meal ideas or whatever. I know some of you will love that. But the channel is going to be changing. You know, we're not going to do this gloom and doom over here that the sky is falling. I don't mind talking about that. I want to talk about that because I think it's very important that we are tracking things, that we are watching things, and how do those things that are happening in real life, how do they affect you as a mother, as a father, and as you prepare, right? Your preparedness journey, your homesteading journey, your journey of being self-sufficient and not depending on other people. You know, I think it's important, and I want to share those things with you, but I also want to share the real life stuff, the true preparedness stuff. And I know it's not glamorous, and I know a lot of people are like, well, this is not scary enough for me. You know, a lot of people say it's fear mongering, but y'all love that. You don't get it twisted. Y'all love that. Y'all love when you see a thumbnail that has something scary on it and you're like, oh, let's talk about it, right? But let's just talk about real life. And what I just talked about today, food preservation, canning, the importance of learning how to can, like, let's get that back. Let's take that back from our ancestors, from our grandparents, from our great-grandparents. Let's take that. Like, what does she get into? What are your hobbies? Oh, I like to pressure can. I like to can food. Oh, you do? What? I don't care. Like, that's real life, and that's what I want to get the channel back to, is more in line with the everyday stuff that we're doing. And I know that's going to turn some off, but guess what? The channel ain't growing anyway, baby. So who cares, right? It really doesn't matter. I don't make hardly any money from YouTube anymore, and so it is predominantly gotten worse and worse, and I don't have any followers. And a lot of you have given me ideas like, go live. I can't do lives. I just can't. My anxiety is just through the roof when I think about lives. Okay, so it is what it is. This is where we're at. I'm gonna make the channel probably more, you know, whole life, everything that we're doing here. So you're probably gonna see more of the garden here. You're gonna see more of the chickens. You're gonna see more food preservation. You're gonna see more of that stuff, because it goes hand in hand, baby. Preparedness, holistic stuff, you know, the importance of plants, gardening, animals, raising animals, being self-sufficient. making your home self-sufficient, doing the projects that make your on-grid home, and doing the projects for when you're off-grid, and how you can continue to live, you know, and have a decent quality of life, right, when something major happens down the road, which it is going to happen. And you're basically building up that compound, building up that homestead, right, because that's what you guys got. So with that, let me know your thoughts on that, but that is the direction that I'm probably going. Probably going to take even a, you know, worse hit than I'm taking now as far as views, but it's okay, because it's going to make me feel good in regards to what I'm doing and what I'm actually showing you guys what to do, right? Gloom and doom's okay from time to time, but it's important that we are teaching each other and learning things from each other that will make us better, and that we can move forward and say, oh, I like that. I learn stuff from the comments all the time. I learn stuff from you guys all the time. You guys email me stuff, you comment stuff. I literally am writing down notes all the time because I'm learning, or I'm seeing something that somebody has. I'm like, ooh, yeah, I need that, right? So that's important, okay? So I hope you guys are well. I hope you had a beautiful Easter weekend and that it was nice and calm and beautiful. And I will see you guys tomorrow in the next video. Take care. Happy Monday. Bye.